The mirror and the leech, the screen fades in. Soft grays and bruised blues smear the edges of a window pane. Rain taps slowly like a dying metronome. Inside, a dim room flickers with the last light of dusk. Dust floats midair, motionless, like thoughts never spoken, and in the corner, a mirror. But it doesn't reflect, not yet. There is a silence that does not heal, not the peaceful kind that wraps around solitude like a blanket, but the hollow silence left behind by the wrong people. The kind that echoes, even after they've gone.
Ow.
Because some people never truly leave.
Thanks.
They stay. Not in presence, but in pattern. Their voices stitched into the fabric of your thinking.
Oh, yeah.
Their shame masquerading as your conscience. And you wonder why you feel heavy in rooms where you now stand alone. Why your body still tenses when no one is watching. Why joy feels like betrayal. The mirror begins to shimmer. A breath fogs its surface, though no one is there. Jung spoke of the shadow, the unclaimed, unspoken, unloved part of yourself. But what happens when your shadow isn't yours? When it was carved by someone else's contempt, and then passed to you like an inheritance? You see, some people don't wound you with knives. They wound you with narratives. You're too much. You're too sensitive. You always make things about yourself. They plant these whispers like seeds. And the worst part? You water them. Because to confront them would mean losing them. And to lose them felt like dying. So instead, you began dying slowly. From within, a forest at night, thick fog crawling between trees. The only sound, your own footsteps on wet leaves. You carry a lantern, but the light is weak, not because of the fog, but because you are holding it too close to your chest, afraid of what it might reveal. This is what it feels like to live with the emotional parasites, the leeches. They feed not on your blood, but your certainty, your voice, your sense of what is real. They disguise themselves as love, as family, as loyalty, but they do not nurture, they extract. And you, in your quiet ache to belong, let them. Schopenhauer once said that compassion is the basis of morality, but compassion, untethered from discernment, becomes self-destruction. We are not obligated to be devoured, even by those who claim to love us. You come to a clearing in the woods, in the center, a mirror nailed to a tree. But it reflects not the forest. It's only you, and behind your image, a second face, faint, almost ghost-like. Not real, but still speaking. Carl Jung warned, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But what of those who make it harder for you to face yours? Those who mock your reflection until you doubt what you see. Those who twist your light until you hide it just to be loved. This film is not about bitterness. It is not a cry of vengeance. It is the quiet art of drawing a line, not in anger, but in reverence, because boundaries are not walls, they're altars. They say, this is sacred, this is me. You reach out toward the mirror, your hand trembles. Your reflection mirrors the movement, but the shadow face behind it remains still. And suddenly, the glass cracks, not shatters, cracks. Hairline fractures branching like veins. This is how healing begins, not in fireworks but in fractures. Alan Watts reminds us, the ego is nothing more than the focus of conscious attention. But what happens when your ego is shaped by someone else's pain? When the self you know is a performance crafted for their comfort, you must cut the cord, not out of cruelty, but clarity. Because sometimes the most spiritual act is not to forgive them, not to fix them, not even to understand them, but to walk away. The forest thins. The forest thins. Morning light pierces through the mist. You emerge barefoot, weathered, but whole. Behind you, the mirror remains cracked, but no longer needed. You now carry your reflection in your own breath. Nietzsche spoke of the Bermensch, the one who creates their own values beyond the herd. This is not arrogance. It is responsibility. To live by truth, not obligation. To choose solitude over imitation. To create a life from the ashes of false belonging. You may feel guilty. You may feel alone. But you are not wrong for walking away. You are not unkind for protecting your spirit. You are not selfish for choosing peace. To cut them off is not an act of war. It is a return to the self, to the silence that heals, the stillness that reveals.
Ow.
The mirror that now finally shows only you. The velvet cage of pale morning leaks into the room. Not sunlight, but something more muted, like the memory of light. The camera glides through a pristine bedroom. The curtains are drawn, the sheets unwrinkled. Everything in order, but nothing feels alive. You wake up in a room you didn't decorate. The furniture is elegant, the colors calming. The air smells like lavender and quiet resignation. You are praised for how well you've adjusted, how agreeable you've become, how easy you are to be around. But the windows, they do not open. There are no locks, no chains, no shouting, just a constant expectation that you stay the same. They smile at you, but only when you shrink, only when you play the role, and so you stay. A porcelain mask rests on a velvet cushion. It has no mouth, only eyes. Eyes that watch, never speak. Jung once called it the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society, to be liked, to be safe, to be acceptable. But what happens when you become the mask, when it no longer protects you, but imprisons you? You laugh at jokes that drain you. You agree with opinions that bury you. You give, even when it hollows you out, because the toxic rarely wear horns. They come in softness. With needs disguised as affection, the wounds they place gently in your hands, and then expect you to heal them. A lavish banquet table. You sit across from a smiling face. Their plate is always full, yours always empty. But you still pass the wine. You begin to believe that their peace is your responsibility, that your silence is love, your exhaustion is proof of loyalty. They mirror your guilt, reflect your fears, till you're no longer sure which thoughts are yours and which ones are echoes. Nietzsche warned of the herd, the collective that demands conformity through kindness, where rebellion is betrayal and quiet suffering a virtue. Here, they do not chain you. They clap for you, applaud your selflessness, reward you for being the version of yourself that costs you the most. A stage. Red curtains part. You stand in the center, under a soft spotlight. 1,000 faceless silhouettes applaud. But every time you try to step off stage, the lights burn brighter, their claps become thunder. This is the velvet cage. It does not wound, it seduces. You stay not out of fear, but because leaving would mean disappointing those who taught you love must be earned. You begin to question yourself. Am I cruel for leaving? Ungrateful? Too much? The whispers get louder in the quiet. You confuse peace with guilt, freedom with selfishness. And yet, a small ember glows at the base of your spine, faint but undeniable, a knowing, a suspicion, that you've betrayed someone more important than them, yourself. A hallway lined with mirrors. You walk slowly, barefoot, trailing your fingers along the walls. Each reflection shows you smiling, composed, perfect. But one mirror at the very end flickers, and in it you are not smiling, you are not composed. You are not small, you are real. Jung called it individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole, of reclaiming the parts you hid, exiled, or forgot. But the first step to becoming whole is realizing you are not. You've worn the mask so long, even you believed it. A golden key lies on a silk pillow. You pick it up, thinking it will unlock something. But there are no locks, only choices. Because the velvet cage is not built of steel. It is built of story, of duty, of fear dressed up as care. Schopenhauer spoke of solitude not as isolation, but as clarity, the silence of your own mind, uninterrupted by performance. You begin to realize it is not selfish to leave a role that consumes you. It is not unkind to disappoint those who preferred your silence. It is not cruel to choose a life that reflects your soul, rather than comforts their illusion. You return to the room from the opening shot, but this time you walk to the window. The glass fogs slightly as you breathe against it. Then, a small crack, then another. You press your hand to the pane. It gives way. Fresh air spills into the room, and with it, the first sound of birdsong. You do not run. You do not scream. You simply step through, barefoot softly. Finally, Kierkegaard wrote of despair, not as sadness, but as being unaware that you are not your true self. You are now aware. And with that awareness comes a question. Am I cruel for leaving? The answer rises. Quiet, unapologetic, true. No, I am finally being kind to myself. Into the fog, a single figure stands at the edge of a dense silver forest. Fog curls around their feet like smoke from an unseen fire. Behind them, a distant house, dimly lit, silent, familiar, but the door is shut now, and locked from the inside. Leaving is not a moment. It is not a clean break. It is not a triumphant act of liberation, tied with ribbons and resolve. Leaving is a wandering into fog. You told yourself you were ready. You cut the rope. Maybe gently, maybe with flames. But the truth is, you do not yet feel free. You walk forward, but every step feels uncertain. The world is quieter now, but not in a peaceful way. In the stillness, something echoes. A voice. You're selfish. You're overreacting. You'll regret this. The fog thickens. Figures move in its folds, familiar silhouettes. Parents, lovers, friends. But when you reach for them, they dissolve. Phantoms of your past, carved from guilt and repetition. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." But solitude feels like exile when you've lived for applause. When your reflection has always been shaped by how they see you, you thought walking away would be the end of the pain. But now you begin to see. It is only the beginning of the self. You move deeper into the woods. The trees are tall, unmoving. The path is unclear. Around you, whispers curl through the branches. Some gentle, others cruel. They sound like you, but are not. Because this is where the war begins. It's not with them, but with the voice they left behind inside you. The one that doubts your worth in silence, that questions every instinct, that demands permission to breathe. Nietzsche warned of the herd, those who cling to collective approval as comfort. To leave the herd is to become a threat, an anomaly, a question that cannot be answered. You begin to feel that weight, not from them, but from the stories they taught you to carry. Stories like, be good, even when it kills you. Make them happy. That's love. Don't walk away. It means you failed. You kneel in the fog. The earth beneath you is wet, soft. Your hands press into it, not to pray, but to remember the weight of your own body. Because in this emptiness, you begin to dissolve. The persona, the mask you wore to be loved, it crumbles. And beneath it, something stirs. Raw, undefined, honest. Carl Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the unraveling of false selves. The slow remembering of the soul beneath the script, but remembering is not easy. Burns. A mirror, hanging from a branch, its surface fogged and cracked. You wipe it with trembling hands. You see yourself, not clearly, but more than before. You notice how many of your thoughts are not yours. How your dreams echo someone else's approval. How your fear was never born in you, but taught. Alan Watts would call this the illusion of self, a performance built from the outside in. Costume you believed was skin. Now, you stand without it. Naked in mind, trembling in spirit, you walk again. Fog swirls, then parts slightly. You hear nothing now. Not guilt, not shame. Only your breath. Solitude is no longer punishment. It is passage. A sacred silence where something deeper begins to speak. And it is not loud. It is not certain. But it is yours. Kierkegaard spoke of inwardness, the turning of the soul toward its own depth, even when the world calls it madness. To walk away is one thing, to not turn back. That is where courage begins. Because there will be days you ache for their voices, even the cruel ones. Days you miss the cage simply because it felt like home. But slowly, step by step, the fog does not clear you do. You no longer need to see 10 steps ahead. You learn to move by feeling, by intuition, by trust in the unknown path. A clearing, small, bare, but open. You stand there alone, but not lonely, because something is blooming in the silence. Not joy, not clarity, but strength. The strength that comes from surviving your own unraveling. You left, but not just the person, not just the place. You left the version of yourself who lived for their permission. And now, though the fog still lingers, you walk, not toward them, not away from them, but toward yourself. The mirror bleeds a room, bare walls, dim light, no doors, no windows, only a chair and a mirror. You sit there alone, but not truly. The silence is dense, not peaceful, but expectant. Like the moment before thunder. You sit alone now, but you are not alone. There is something here with you, and it wears your face. The mirror across from you begins to shift. Subtly, a blink, a breath, but not yours. The reflection moves before you do. And that's when you know you are meeting the self you buried. Jung called it the shadow, not evil, but unloved. Parts of yourself you rejected to keep their love, your rage, your voice, your needs, your boundaries. The fire they told you was too dangerous to hold, so you extinguished it. For them. Inside the mirror, a second version of you stands, their eyes darker, their mouth cracked open, silent. They do not look wounded, they look awake. This is not a haunting, it is a reckoning. You disowned your fire to be accepted. You wore their shame like borrowed clothing. You apologized for your instincts, until you forgot they were sacred. Kierkegaard called this the descent into inwardness, agonizing journey into one's contradictions. It is not glamorous. It is not clean. It is a quiet collapse beneath the weight of a self half-lived. The shadow speaks, not in words, but in memory. A moment you silenced your no. A time you smiled while crumbling inside. A choice you didn't make, because you were afraid to stop pleasing them. The mirror bleeds, not blood, but light. Dark, heavy light leaking from the cracks. You thought it was strength to stay silent. You thought it was love to make yourself small. But now, as you look into the mirror, you see it wasn't love. It was fear, rehearsed over years. A fear passed down like a secret. The mirror shakes slightly. Hairline fractures grow like veins across its surface, each one revealing a glimpse of something truer behind the mask. You see it now. How much of your pain was projection? How much of your guilt was never yours to carry? How their discomfort became your compass? Their silence, your script. You bled to keep them whole, Nietzsche warned. He who fights monsters must take care not to become one. But what happens when the monster was never external, but a disfigured version of yourself you were taught to hide? The reflection in the mirror steps forward. You do not recoil, you breathe. Because beneath the sharpness, the fire, the grief, is something fierce and true, not the you they sculpted, but the one who watched silently from behind your eyes, waiting. Alan Watts said the ego is only a pattern of attention. But you've worn that pattern like a skin, and now it peels. Piece by piece, the false self falls away, and in its place, stillness. You rise from the chair, walk slowly to the mirror, you press your fingers to the glass. It's cold, then warm, then gone. The mirror shatters not outward, but inward. There, amidst the shards, you see your real face. Not perfect, not polished, but whole. Schopenhauer spoke of solitude as the only place we can be ourselves. But solitude also invites the truth. The truth, when it first appears, can feel like violence. You see that now? Your rage was never dangerous. Your silence was. Your refusal to break the pattern. That was the wound. The room dissolves. Walls fade. Light spills in like breath after drowning. You step forward. Not into light, not into clarity, but into integration. Jung's individuation is not about becoming better. It's about becoming real. Accepting that you are both light and shadow. Desire and fear, grace and grief. The person you tried not to be. That person. It's part of you. You carried their shame, but it was never yours. You silenced your truth, but it never died. And now, through the bleeding mirror, you no longer seek approval. You no longer apologize for your fire. You see your face, cracked, unmasked, alive. And for the first time you bow to it, not in surrender, but in reunion. The collapse of the idol, a gray silence settles like snow over a forgotten theater. The stage is cracked. The curtains hang like the limbs of an exhausted god. In the center, a marble statue stands flawless, radiant, adored. But it is not you. It was never you. There comes a moment, not with thunder, but with a whisper, when the illusion begins to splinter. Not by force, but fatigue. The soul, tired of pretending, you stare at the idol they made for you. A perfect mask, sculpted from guilt, obedience, and quiet suffering. It smiled when it was supposed to. It nodded. It stayed. It believed, even when it bled. You thought, if you played the role long enough, they'd see you. That one day they'd wake up, realize your worth, offer the apology that would stitch everything back together. But that day never came, because they loved the illusion, not the person behind it. Alan Watts once said, "We suffer because we believe we are this separate ego." But the suffering deepens when the ego was never even yours. It was gifted to you, imposed, a loyal echo carved in their image. You remember how you dimmed your anger so they wouldn't fear you? How you wore their approval like armor? How your silence was mistaken for grace? How every compromise became a rope around your own neck? Now, you watch as the idol fractures. Quiet crack runs through its chest, then another, like veins of lightning. A tremor hums beneath your feet. The collapse is not loud, it is sacred, like the slow falling of a cathedral to dust. Nietzsche spoke of this, of idols, of gods, of dangerous hopes, of what happens when the thing you believed in begins to rot from within. Beware that, when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster. When you gaze long into the abyss also gazes into you. Now here you are, on the edge of the abyss, not just staring, but being seen. It stares back, with hollow eyes and infinite silence. It's not as punishment, but as truth. You thought the collapse would kill you. And in a way it does. Not the body, but the illusion. The one that whispered, just hold on. Maybe they'll come around. Letting go is not letting go of them. It is letting go of the fantasy. The future that never existed. The echo that never spoke for you. You kneel among the rubble. Ashes coat your palms like old memories. Breathing hurts, but you are breathing. Schopenhauer once called life a pendulum between pain and boredom. But here, in this quiet ruin, there is something else. Stillness. A heartbeat beneath the ash. Faint but yours. You do not rise yet. There is mourning in this moment. The death of who you were for them. The death of who they never were for you. But as the dust settles, something flickers. Light small, honest, unmasked. Kierkegaard might call this despair. But not all despair is destruction. Sometimes it is the doorway. It's not outwards, but in. You sit with the broken idol beside you, and for the first time, you don't try to fix it. You simply watch it burn and feel yourself slowly begin to return. The fire that heals a vast empty field stretches beneath an overcast sky. Charred trees reach like fingers toward the heavens, remnants of a wildfire long since past. The ground still smokes faintly in places, wisps curling into the cold morning air. A lone figure walks barefoot across the ash. Each step sends tiny clouds of soot into the air, but the stride is steady, slow, present. You walk alone now, not because you've been abandoned, but because the noise has fallen away. The voices you once obeyed, the masks you wore to belong, the echoes of a life spent apologizing for your own existence, gone. Silence blooms where chaos once ruled, you begin to see. This silence is not suppression, it is a sanctuary. You breathe deeper, not to calm yourself or someone else's comfort, but because the air finally feels like yours. You used to flinch at solitude, mistook it for exile, but solitude you now see is not absence, it is space. The figure pauses at a small pool of water. Its surface is still, dark, almost mirror-like. The reflection is clear now, no distortions. No borrowed expressions. Alan Watts once said that we suffer because we believe we are this separate ego. But what if we suffer more? We mistake others' egos for our own. For so long you were a projection, a story they told about you, written in the ink of their fears. But now the page is burned. You're not the character they cast you as. You are the author returning to the pen. This is not a grand rebirth. No lightning strike, no trumpet sound. It is the quiet fire inside your chest, the one that refused to go out, even in the storm. Carl Jung called this individuation, not perfection, wholeness, the slow unification of shadow and light, the refusal to amputate parts of yourself just to fit. No more fragmenting, no more pretending. There is grief in this, a quiet mourning for the self you never got to be, for the energy spent holding together someone else's broken world. But beneath the grief, there is something else. Relief. The relief of no longer performing, no longer managing another's emotional storms while drowning in your own. You do not owe anyone your silence. You're dimming, shrinking. This is the fire that heals, not the fire that burns everything down, but the fire that cauterizes the wound. You no longer seek peace from those who feed on your unease. You no longer barter your boundaries for breadcrumbs of affection. You no longer apologize for taking up space in a world that tried to keep you small. This is not arrogance. This is reclamation. You are becoming not who they needed you to be, but who you always were, beneath the noise. You've stopped mistaking attachment for love, possession for devotion, abandonment for guilt. You've begun to listen to the quiet voice within. The one that doesn't shout, doesn't beg, but simply knows. This is not the end of pain. It's not the end of questions. But it is the end of giving yourself away to be loved by those who never learned how to love. This is the beginning of self-trust, of walking barefoot through the remains and realizing your feet have always known the way. The fire did not destroy you. It refined you. And what remains is real, is whole, is yours. Return without the chain, you re-enter the world, not as the person they knew, but as the self you buried. Long ago, not with fanfare, not with fireworks, but with stillness. Your silence isn't a wound anymore. It is armor, not forged from vengeance, but from discernment. You've tasted what it means to contort, to bend your spirit just to fit a room that always shrunk you. To laugh on command, to nod when your soul screamed, to betray yourself in the name of belonging. But now, you bow to no altar of approval. You wear no mask of gentle compliance. The persona they loved is gone, and in its place, something heavier, something real. They don't see the work you did in the dark. They won't thank you for the way you stitched yourself back together, for the years you spent unraveling the lies you once called love. But that's okay. No. You didn't do it for them. Healing was never meant to be a performance. It was sacred. It was solitary. It was yours. Kierkegaard once said, "Life can only be understood backward, but it must be lived forward." And now, you finally understand. Leaving them wasn't selfish. It was survival. It was sacred. It was love. The kind you finally learned to give to yourself. Some people are not meant to be healed by your presence. They are meant to be purified by your absence. You stop handing your light to those who only use it to cast bigger shadows. You stop tying yourself to pain and calling it compassion. You stop bleeding to keep others warm. You stop mistaking your suffering for strength. You've learned to walk away, not in hatred, not in defiance, but in truth. You've learned to cut the vine that chokes the tree, even if that vine once felt like home. You return without the chain, the one they fastened to your guilt, to your silence, to your hope that if you loved hard enough, they might finally see you. But now, you see yourself. And in that quiet act of courage, not loud enough to be applauded, not tragic enough to be mourned, you become whole. Not perfect, not healed beyond recognition, but whole. Because now, you belong to yourself. And that is enough.